Welcome to Pilot Initiation, a developer series where we talk about our creative thoughts and ideas. Today, we are going to be having our first bonus episode. This is episode 4.5. Today, we are going to be off the topic of Lovia's Resonance and onto the topic of the comic series that I've been trying to develop, Demon's Requiem. So, as far as you know, I have Chapter 0 published, which is basically a prologue to the actual story to come. And the prologue is just a lot of background information. Well, not a lot, but it's the background information that we need to start Demon's Requiem. So, what do you have to say about Chapter 0? I know it's been a minute since you read it, but I'm sure it's still
in my head.
Yeah, so what is your thoughts on that?
I think it was a good little nod to start off with. It gives us just that little bit of hints of what we'll be expecting, that this stuff will trigger a bunch of events,
Alright, so let's back up for a step. Demon's Requiem is not anywhere close to the same type of series that Lovia's Resonance is going to be. Demon's Requiem is going to be a action type of shonen style comic. So with that, how do you think I should go into Chapter 1?
Chapter 1.
Okay, let me pull back for a second again. Chapter 1 is going to be strictly introductions. So I already have a rough idea of like what I want to be done in Chapter 1, who's going to be introduced in Chapter 1. What would you like to see incorporated in Chapter 1?
Chapter 1, that's it, really, just an introduction. That's all that's really needed for a first chapter, I think. But what would also be good is to know what we're going to be dealing with power-wise, character-wise, enemy-wise. Like, slight things.
Okay, so you're saying instead of just character introductions, introduce the conflict a little bit as well.
Just like a little tiny bit, not all just right. Jumping into it though.
Yeah. So that's going to be a hard accomplishment to pull off with that comic series specifically, because the conflict in itself is going to be multiple things. I'm not just limiting the conflict to the main character, Incubus. However, his conflict is going to be the most impactful on all of the characters, because his conflict is going to directly influence other people's conflicts as well. So when it comes to introducing the conflict in Chapter 1, we won't see much of it, but I was definitely going to include a little bit of it. Probably not to the extent that you're hoping for, but it's going to be there.
Good enough. I thought you had did rough drafts for Chapter 1 already, though.
I actually have like a page and a half. Well, I say a page and a half. It's like 75% of a page done for it. I may include that in this. But as of right now, I have not worked on that in the last year. The last year, actually. So we actually might start seeing a little progress on it if I have the time to throw it in somewhere, because with the upcoming break we're about to take already, it's going to be a 25-day thing going on. So in that time, I might try to get multiple chapters for Lovia's Resonance done. And depending on how many chapters I get done for that, I may start working on Demon's Requiem as well. Being that I already have somewhat of a start, I just need to continue on it.
And when you do that, though, you don't get jumbled, right? Like, those ideas don't start to run together, do they?
No, I'm glad they don't, because I can clearly separate the two stories from each other, because they're so different in everything. So with Demon's Requiem, it's like I want it to go for action and like very high energy things. But when it comes to Lovia's Resonance, I wanted to focus on the more subtle things that happen in the story, really. So with Lovia's Resonance, it's like I wanted to start focusing on the romance and the horror aspects of it rather than the main conflict of overall everything. And with Demon's Requiem, it's the complete opposite because I wanted the main focus to be the main conflict. That way, not only are we getting character development, we're also seeing like fast paced progression of the plot. And that plot is going to directly affect all the other characters in that one too. So, just to give this video a little boost, I'm going to throw in all the character concepts that the characters we know of as of now are going to be introduced. Maybe for later chapters as well, but as of chapter 1, I'm going to throw in all of those character concepts into this video.
I'm pretty sure I know like at least 3 of them.
Well, yeah,
3 minimum.
You know the main 3, that's going to be Incubus, Star, and the way I'm doing it is going to be Trey. Incubus is Trey, and Trey are brothers, and Star is going to be a girl that he meets and eventually gets a little more in character depth with the 2 of them. But as of right now, in chapter 1, so to say, we won't know much about any of these characters other than Incubus because he's truly the only one that we're going to have somewhat of a backstory on as of right now. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to later character development, we're going to see a lot of behind the scenes of what's going on with other characters. So that's going to be something that I really look forward to writing in the comic series, is how these characters' histories affect them currently in the story.
And when you say that this is like more like you perfecting a story you've been working on for forever.
Yeah, so this is something that me and you both have been doing since our early childhood, and we've took a lot of inspiration from various shows that we watched as children. So that's where a lot of the high action comes from. But this is something that's been probably a decade and more into the works. So this is going to be what the true essence of the story actually needs to be and actually finishes on. Because compared to what it was when we first started developing to what it is now, this is a whole different but true to its energy story. So the comparison is like, it's not just taking inspiration and trying to mash it all together as one series, but this one's taking an original thing and taking inspiration from other people and then making it something unique and something that really holds meaning to some people.
And so you think you may get to it before the end of this year, though?
That's very possible. So as of chapter 1, it may be before the end of this year, but I really can't say for sure because the progress I'm making on Lovia's Resonance is prioritized, in all honesty. But when it comes to that series, it's really the only reason I'm prioritizing Lovia's Resonance. It's because I want to get a foot in the door with this book and then hopefully have some actual writing skills to take away from this one that I learned, and then add that on top of what I already have developed with Demon's Requiem. So it's really just the icing on the cake because I definitely wanted to prioritize the comic, but at the same time I know how I function. So it would have took some time to get to that, but it will be gotten to. I can't say if it's going to be within this year, but it will be soon.
And talking about Incubus, we already know that's more like towards you type focus, right?
So that's actually a character that I've been like back and forth on. So when it comes to Incubus's character, back in the day when we first started it, it did like reflect my own personality a lot. But into the story now, it's not so much that I'm trying to just reflect myself into him. I'm also trying to reflect other people that are in a way like me into him. So it's really just a blend of character personalities from people that are really close to me going into this character's design this time. So we're gonna be seeing like very diverse character concepts within Demon's Requiem, because that's one thing I was gonna focus very heavily on is like how these characters interact with each other and how these characters are like very diverse in backgrounds.
And going back on chapter 0, right? This was going on to show more about his father and his mother, right?
Yeah,
That was the
so
focus.
chapter 0 was isolated. It was just Incubus's father, Jason, his mother, Ezra, and at the time she was pregnant with him, so he wasn't born yet. But that events in chapter 0, they basically give us insight to why Incubus is the way he is. Because without these happenings, we wouldn't understand like what was going on with him entirely. So that's why I wanted to include that. So it gives us the background on why he has these abilities and why he thinks the way he does, and also why he's basically constructed the way he is. Because without those events, he would pretty much just be a normal person.
And do you look forward to like the fights?
Absolutely. I know there's going to be some things that I have trouble drawing out, but when it comes to the fights, I'm definitely really hyped to draw those because I know there's going to be some to where it's just like nonstop action and like sometimes people just straight up dying. I know some characters we won't be ready for it, but when it comes to the action that I want to happen, it's going to be very like graphic. So that's one thing I'm gonna incorporate too. We won't see it until like I want to say a later chapter in Demon's Requiem, but it's gonna be the fight scenes are gonna be very graphic and realistic. So when it comes to the subspecies of people in this book called chimeras, which are basically humans with animal fusions to them in a way, you're gonna see like them holding certain abilities and it actually being on a realistic scale of overall graphicness. Like, for example, one of the character designs I have is a spider and a woman. So she'll have the ability of like webs and stuff, but she'll also have like fangs that will be able to inject somebody with a lethal dose of venom. But her body is going to be more adapt to it, so it's going to be more venom than just a regular spider. Like it'll probably disintegrate a person.
That actually sounds pretty hype. I think I remember the design of that, but I don't remember you telling me how much detail on it.
Yeah, so the chimeras are going to be like a very detailed concept that I go into because those characters are definitely harder to develop because I have to think of a character design to begin with. Then I also have to go back and think what animal do I want them to possess because when it comes to the chimeras, I'm not trying to make them look as human as possible. I want some people to just be straight up distorted because this is technically a curse in the story. So some people are just gonna like hold animal resemblances and not hold any of their abilities. So it could really like be a curse in some instances with people, but others it'd be more of a blessing. So the three characters specifically that I focused on the concepts already for were I can't remember the names, but I remember the animals that I used. I used a scorpion, a spider, and a squid. So with that, it was kind of like a Tokyo Ghoul concept in a way, but with this one, it's like harder for them to conceal their like animal side because they can't just tuck it away and like go out in public. They actually have to like try to warp these things around their body. Like say the spider lady, she's actually gonna have spider legs coming out of her back. So she can't just tuck that away. Like she has to find ways to like wrap that around her body That way she could wear clothes over it.
Mm.
And the other character, he's gonna have a scorpion tail that's like the size of his own body. He can't tuck that away or go in public with that. So like it's gonna be very difficult for these people to try to like live normal lives.
I'm trying to remember names too, because I remember the exact one you're talking about. That was Kaneki-ish, but I can't remember his name. But it was definitely a name. uh, did it start with a K?
I can't remember. I can find the concept somewhere. I'm definitely gonna include it in this video, being that we brought it up and talked about it. So it'll be found, and we'll bring it up in a later time. So, what kind of action are you hoping to see?
Pretty much what you've been doing. I mean, your action scenes have always been kind of out there to me, which kind of appeals to me. But it's like now that you've gotten better, you include more detail in what you're doing. So I can't really just say. I kind of just like to see it because it's so different.
Nice. So, when it comes to how I did it back then compared to how I'm gonna do it now, there was a lot of concepts that were like all over the place in those old days with Demon's Requiem. It wasn't even called Demon's Requiem back then. That's how bad it was. But back then there was just like concepts that were all over the place that really just made no sense. So back then it was much easier for me to just throw some off the wall crap out there and then get away with it because it wasn't 10 people maybe max reading it.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to go to a global audience. I have to be like a little more careful with dialogue, plot, and plot progression going into conflict action. Because if I just do it the same way I did back then, it wouldn't get hype. So this time around, I'm definitely gonna try to mimic the same action and same like high intensity that I had back then, but it definitely is gonna be a lot different, like you said. So this time around, we're not gonna see like so much like Dragon Ball Z style combat, but we will see some like high intensity action similar to it, but not at the same level.
I'm kind of thinking like, with these chimeras, right?
Yeah.
Will they ever be like fighting each other? Or
absolutely. So that's actually one of the ways I introduced them on like the mass scale that they are, because in chapter 1 we're only going to see one other chimera and he's going to be close friends to Incubus in the further chapters. But this is a global thing in Demon's Requiem. Demon's Requiem takes place on Earth with like a little bit altered religion history, I guess you can call it. So in later chapters, it's probably gonna be like after this one, after chapter 1 actually, to introduce a little bit more of the conflict. So the way I plan to do it is actually going to be similar to a human trafficking thing, which is a very serious conflict in itself, but it's even worse when it comes to chimeras because they're seen as like lower beings because of the curse. So that's how I'm going to introduce them, is actually they're being trafficked into fighting rings. So like gangs are paying people to make them fight each other. And that's how like the 3 that I was talking about earlier are going to be introduced to each other, because they're going to be putting this pin against each other and they're just trying to survive. They don't want to kill each other, but that's like almost all they know. So that's going to be a real interesting thing to see play out, because I don't have a set guideline on these things yet, but I do have set starting points. So starting on that mainly is something I'm really hype about, because I know it's such a like pushy topic, and seeing that done in an actual like meaningful sense is going to be something different that I do compared to how I've done it before.
And then you can add so many different types of character development from said experiences and all that.
Yes, but it's not going to be limited to those fights by the chimeras, because we're also going to see like other cultures of people as well throughout the story because they're going to be traveling the world basically. So we're also going to see like cultures of people that are affected by the curse of Chimera, and we're going to see how they use their curse in order to like benefit from it instead of just die by it.
That's a real interesting thing. Never would even thought about it that much. So, do you have any like set ideas on what chapter outside of the introduction aspect? How long do you think the chapter will?
Um, I have no idea how long chapters are going to be with this, honestly, because it takes so much time to draw these pages and then have to go back and digitalize all these pages. It is a time consuming process, and then it's just me. I mean, I can hit you up and digitalize it sometimes, but to reach perfection in a way, like we both have to be going back and forth on it for a good minute. But when it comes to how long the chapters will be, I'll try to keep it a good length to where we get a clean explanation of all the things happening and good plot progression and good character interaction with each other. It'll be a lot longer than writing a book for sure because I have to actually draw out those detailed interactions. But I think that's one of the things I'm most excited for is actually drawing that out because sometimes it's going to be like real goofy interactions. Other times it'll be like horrific interactions to where like they're bleeding out and like just straight up dying, and then other times it's where like they're in like peaceful areas and just like enjoying their moments.
And you think that would be way more interesting to do than to just write it out, right?
Absolutely, because when it comes to writing it out, writing it is just like a lot of back and forth between character dialogue, like she said, he said, all that. But when it comes to comic and drawing and then writing it out, you don't have to go back and forth and like clarify who said what because you see it like it's right there and then it's clear and then it's extra detailed so you don't have to try to imagine what's happening.
Man, I really have not even thought about that in a while. My focus was just on Lovia for the moment, so I'm still
this
thinking.
was a curveball episode.
But it's okay. And more about Incubus. He's not a Chimera, right?
No, he's unique to himself. So the way the events take place, he's cursed directly by the entity that caused the curse of Chimera. But that does not make him a Chimera because this entity is a demon god basically. And it did the curse of Chimera to basically prove how worthy its existence was to its followers. But in the chapter 0, Incubus's father, Jason, is going on a research trip to basically like up uplift this event to basically bring it to the public of like how its history actually unfolded. And he actually finds like a tablet of this entity and it still holds like an essence of its being. And Ezra, Incubus's mom, happens to be in the same area at the time, so the entity Chaos finds itself to like host an Incubus to an extent. So Incubus's curse is unique, but it's caused by the same entity that does the curse of Chimera. So their powers are definitely linked, but his are unique to him.
And Trey, it would be. Have we even discussed Trey on that topic?
No. Yet? So Trey, he's gonna be unique as well because compared to Incubus, his brother, he's the older brother, Trey, and compared to Incubus, he's just a normal guy. But on the topic of his abilities, because this is going to be like an action shonen almost, his abilities are done through study. Because the way I introduce him, he's like off in college already. So he's like in his early 20s. But he comes back to visit Incubus to like just touch up with him.
Yeah.
But later we find out that he's a study of demonology. So his abilities are the basic summoning of demons to his will with no repercussions. So we're gonna see him at like a high power scale compared to like a lot of people early in the comic. So he'll start off as like one of the strongest.
So we have like a dynamic power scaling where it won't just be this person overly dominates this person. It'll be kind of skill based.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be skill based because like you're gonna see them actually training themselves for a lot of their powers that they acquire. But when it comes to like the major conflict, the first time that they see it and get involved in it, the main enemy, Chaos, the entity itself, is gonna dominate all of them almost entirely. So that's something we're gonna see is like we're gonna see like a huge gap in power scale, and then we're gonna see like dynamic back and forth in power scale.
And do you feel like you know how you're gonna end it yet?
I definitely know, but I'm not telling you because
okay.
You're gonna hate me. Everyone that reads this is gonna hate me.
It's okay.
But I might do like a Attack on Titan thing and do multiple endings. So you might hate all of them. You might hate 3 different endings. Alright, let's say what's 2 other things that you got?
2 other things. Man. Oh no, I'm kind of dry on the topic. It's just been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we actually discussed this.
I know most of the ones that started from the original run of the comic will return though.
Yeah, so there was like a lineup of 6 of them in the original comic, so I definitely put a realistic spin on all of those characters. So when it comes to how these characters are reintroduced, it's going to be very dynamic. So when it came to back in the day, these characters were just thrown out with like rough background. But this one, I'm actually going into detailed background of where these characters come from and how they know each other. So that's something we're going to see a lot of is definitely character background for sure.
Looking forward to that. And with this one, we're going to have, will weapons be like a major thing or will it be mostly powers?
So it's going to be mostly powers, but we're going to see like realistic modern day weapons used occasionally. Because when it comes to powers, they're like in the early series parts of it, they're still going to be like kind of weak with their powers, so they'll have to rely on like outside sources for things because they still have like untapped potential. But when it comes to reliance on it, we're going to see a lot less of it as you progress into the story. But when it comes to weapons, we're not going to see a lot of it, but we'll see some of it. But it's mainly going to focus on their powers as characters because that's something we're going to see a variety of. Because we're going to see Incubus's curse, we're going to see the curse of Chimera, and then we'll also see magic entirely. So those are like already 3
power scales.
Yeah. So I hope you are ready for me to actually start on this.
I've been ready.
I know it's been a long time, but now it's like make or break because it's time to actually get to working on it. So that wraps up our bonus episode 4.5 of Pilot Initiation. We will see you next time.